All right. Welcome to another edition of Sabbath Lounge. This is Matt,
And Jake here.
we're coming to you with another Torah portion. What's this one, Jake?
This is week 29's Acharei Moat.
After death.
Right. It sounds better when you say it.
Yeah, it's easier for sure. So we appreciate you stopping by, and we have a whole series of these where we try to do the Torah portions each week. And some of them, it's taken us a little while to get this done, and some of them are from last year, and some of them are from this year. But we appreciate giving us a like, comment, share it with someone.
Right. And so this is just our high-level view. Go read it yourselves. This is Leviticus 16 through 18.
So, yep, check it out. And so here we go. So, Jake, what did I put transfer in here? What do you think I did that?
I mean, that sounds like only a question you can answer, Matt.
Because it talks about laying hands on this goat.
Yes.
And so, transferring the sin.
Right. So this is talking about the portion where they have the two goats. Now we need to double transfer.
Start over. So, and then in Leviticus 16:29, it talks about this lasting ordinance. Would you read this and tell us what is this lasting ordinance that he's talking about?
This is to be a lasting ordinance for you. On the 10th day of the 7th month, you must deny yourselves and not do any work, whether native-born or a foreigner residing among you. Now, and I see in most translations, this will say, this is to be an ordinance for you forever. So this lasting ordinance, lasting is typically translated forever.
Yes, and when we were looking this up just a second ago, that's in the King James, I think is what we saw that does say forever.
Right. And it's also native born or a foreigner residing among you. So this isn't, you can't get out of it by saying I'm not Israel.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's everybody who wants to be tied into this group of believers.
Yeah. And so at the beginning of 16, this is where you have the two goats, and that's why I put the loading thing up there before.
Right.
And they've got two goats, and one is released for Azazel, and the other lot. So basically, you cast lots on these goats, and it says, Aaron shall bring the goat upon which Yahuwah's lot fell and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before Yahuwah to make atonement with him and to let Azazel go into the wilderness.
Right. So, and this is what's typically known as the scapegoat.
The scapegoat, yep. So, and the text doesn't say this, but didn't, if I'm not mistaken, didn't at some point they tied a ribbon on it or something and it always came back a certain color? And then
I think this is I don't know if it's in the Talmud, but it's at least Jewish principle, Jewish historical information that that's the case. And then also when Messiah dies, I think there's a tie-in with that where the ribbon always came back the wrong color, or the goat wasn't supposed to return but did, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely some things there that are interesting, and if you've never checked them out, you should check it out and look into a little bit more. Who's Azazel? What's that about? And there may even be some entity that is connected to. So it's kind of
it's kind of strange,
kind of a head scratcher. Yeah, exactly. Trying to figure out what it means, but this part is not a head scratcher, and this is why we're talking about it. Because it clearly does say that this is something you're supposed to do forever. It's not a one-time deal, and so this is the Day of Atonement, and then part of the fall festival.
Right. So this would be in, Matt, you're saying fall festival, but it says the 7th month. Isn't that July?
Yes. Well, and in a modern Roman kind of calendar, correct? But Yahuwah's calendar is different,
right? So we won't go into that here.
And if you've never looked at that, you should look at that.
Right.
So, not what you think, maybe.
Right.
So, as we continue the rotating plate, the 7th month and the 10th day afflict your souls. What does this mean?
What does this mean?
It sounds like something bad.
It sounds ominous for sure.
It doesn't sound like It doesn't sound
Go
like
have a party.
You're going to be real successful standing on the street corner yelling at people in a megaphone saying, "Afflict your souls."
Ooh, maybe not in that voice. But yes.
People are just going to line up.
Right.
How do we do this?
I'm aching to do that.
So when you look it up in like a blue letter Bible, this is what pulls up in the blue letter. And, basically look at all these, you see humble a bunch. It's mentioned several times there. And, this idea of humbling and afflicting. And some people say, I think the most common thing is to believe that this is about fasting. I say, if you want to fast this day, do that. If it means you wear sackcloth ashes and you mourn or spend your day praying, I just think there's probably lots of things you could do here that would fall under humbling yourself.
Right.
Being on your knees, being on your face. I mean, that to me all seems to fit.
Right. It's and you got to kind of look at what's this day pointing to, and that kind of puts it in perspective of what you're to do on this day.
Yeah.
When it's pointing to, the return of Messiah and Judgment Day, it's going to be a very humbling experience for people, and people are going to be on their knees, and you're going to be, it's going to be a sad time, and a exciting time. It's kind of got that duality to it. But in our flesh, it's going to be a very scary and sad time because of all the people that you may know and love that are being judged and not following you into the millennium.
Well, and just quite simply about that scripture about we should all work out our salvation with fear and trembling.
Right.
And I mean, he picks and decides, and he is the judge, and you should be a little apprehensive about this event.
Yeah.
I don't think you should walk in and be like, "Oh man, I'm
this.
good. I got nothing."
Yeah.
You're not gonna find anything on me. Like, really? Wow.
Yeah.
So I think that's why, just because it's make sure you're good.
Make sure Messiah is covering you.
Yes. And then I also thought about the scripture in Isaiah 42:3, a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. And, that's just the idea of being bowed down and being humbled. There's just so many scriptures that talk about the difference of how he hates pride,
right?
And he wants people to be humble. I mean, this is what he wants,
right? So, and I think people always go to the fasting thing because most of the time when people are humbling themselves or afflicting themselves in Scripture, they do it through fasting, but it's not necessarily what it's saying to do.
Yeah.
And then the one other thing I would say about it is and as to why people go with fasting is there's places in Scripture where it says on the day of fasting.
Yeah.
And this is the only, if you might call it, required fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in reality, is it very hard to do this day and fast? No.
Right.
Especially if you work and you get busy at work, and if you do the sundown to sundown like we do, I mean, you're sleeping at sundown, you get to eat. Yeah, you sleep for half of it.
Yeah.
And so it's not that hard.
Right. This says I save my 12-hour sleep day for that.
Yes. So it's one of those things where, but definitely we are commanded to do this. It's not an option.
Right. And if you got the diabetes, eat something for crying out loud. I mean, you're not going to be sinning by eating something if you got the diabetes.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have to do that.
It's not about taking trips to the hospital.
No. So, and then there's some rules about what to eat and what not to eat. And so if you see this going down, say you're driving down the road in Texas and you see this, well, you may be in a zoo or something.
I was gonna say only several times have I done that
Yes.
since I've been in Texas.
Or you just paid $100 a car to drive through this place,
right?
And they're probably not real excited about this if this is happening, because there's
been a
bad
breach.
thing. It's gone Jurassic Park here.
Yeah,
but you're not supposed to eat another animal that is attacked and mauled by another animal.
Right. You don't eat things that have died of themselves or have been killed by some other animal.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which in general, that's
good practice.
Yeah, I mean, those things aren't that appetizing, and that's not a hard thing to follow. So, and then we've got this supposed to be a picture of a grapevine, Leviticus 18:5. Live by my standards and obey my rules, and you will have life through them. I am Yahweh. It made me think of this. Jake, will you read this one?
If you obey my commandments, you will live in my love. I have obeyed my Father's commandments, and in that way I live in his love. And very similar.
Mm-hmm. And it's this idea of, being attached to, being the vine. And so that's exactly what I thought of, is when he talks about I am the vine. So, we want to abide in that. And very similar. And then you get into these, and there's lots of rules, Jake, here.
Lots of rules.
And all about sex.
Wait a minute. I can't be forced to do all these rules?
Yes.
What do you mean?
And so
that's not love.
So these are, so we just talked about this and how, what did you say? You said something about relating to your neighbor.
Right. So the rule is love your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's the only commandments now. Love God and love your neighbor. Right.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to love your neighbor? Well, what if it's easy, right? So we talked about this. It's easy when it says do not murder.
Yes.
Right. We know that's not loving.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And a culture would say that many of these things are not loving.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But what if you were in a different culture? You might need to be told these things.
Yeah.
To realize that's not love.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and the culture we live in does seem to be headed to a place where
right?
It's like,
that is love. I'm just loving.
What
people.
do you fly your rainbow flag and love everybody?
Yeah, you just make the love.
So, but it clearly tells us there are rules to this, and if you don't define like what you were saying, then how did you define love your neighbor? It's just like whatever you decide that means at the time.
Right.
And I don't think it can work that way.
Right. It makes it very subjective.
Yeah.
When I don't think Yah intends us to decide what love is.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go through these real quick. So he said, don't have sex with your mom and dad. Don't
or
have
your
sex with
sister.
Your sister. Or your aunt and uncle.
Or your daughter or son-in-law.
Or your brother or sister's wife, unless your sibling is dead.
Hunter Biden store style. Or with your wife's sister, unless your brother-in-law died and she needs kids.
No sex with the grandchildren.
Or the neighbor's wife.
No same sex.
You're not allowed to say that. Stay away from the animals.
Yes. And then it even talks about abortions here, about passing your children through the fire of Moloch. And it's kind of interesting. He says all this up here, and it's kind of like, oh, and also, by the way, if you've messed around doing all these other things, you can't get rid of this problem and do this child sacrifice.
Right.
But everyone today, look at what's happening with our world. When you say no abortions, and people just lose their mind. Well, you don't care about reproductive health.
You don't care about women.
Yes.
Reproductive rights.
Mm-hmm.
No, we just don't want you murdering another person.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. And so many times the people that are doing this, they have not followed, not necessarily these rules, but they haven't been following Yah's rules in general.
Yeah. And the deal is you can't murder your way out of an inconvenience.
No.
You're not allowed to do that.
No. So this kid spitting his food out. Jake, why do we have this here?
Because the land will spit them out if they don't follow the rules. That's what Yah says. Anyway.
Very sobering. And this is also this section, you start getting into Moses being very prophetic, and he's saying things like this because, and then Moses at the time may not even understand it fully, but Yahuwah knew that, these
This
guys
was going to happen.
They're going to get spit out of the land.
Right.
So, and they do. But he told them up front, look, this is what's going to happen. So, week 29 has everything from the goat and laying hands on the goat to just all kinds of stuff here. The land spitting you out.
Yeah.
So, but once again, we said don't take our word for it. Read Leviticus 16 through 18. Anything else, Jake?
Yeah, just read through it and find out what Yah wants from us.
That's right. That's
in
how
terms of loving our neighbor and loving him.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. And this is Matt
and Jake
signing off.